In the meantime, let's go through some of these stories inside the paper in a bit more detail. Jack Rowlett, the political commentator, is here to do that. Jack, good morning.
Good morning.
Who do you think has the best analysis, do you think, of the Health Secretary's vision of what's going to happen to the NHS? The Guardian say, the Prime Minister's words, that the NHS is broken, not beaten. The reality is the amount of money it needs this time round in the budget is probably not going to be sufficient.
Yeah, I think it's definitely broken, as Wes Streeting says. I think the jury's still out on whether it's beaten. I think essentially we're going to find that out over the next 5 years of this Parliament. I think the focus on the NHS in this budget is absolutely right from Labour's perspective. We know that they were voted into office on the promise to improve public services. And actually, the electorate knew that taxes were going to rise in order to fund that. I think the big question is that we've previously seen increases to NHS funding, and that hasn't been matched by improved productivity and efficiency. So the real question is, if they're going to put in this, I think it's about 4% increase to annual funding, it's about £7 billion, they're going to do that. Is that going to be matched by the efficiency? And I think the difference between this and some of the previous approaches we've seen is this is more structural. They're going to be providing those specialized surgical hubs. They're going to be looking at getting people away from GP surgeries and towards these more specialized diagnostic centers. And we know that there's a big focus on capital investment as well. And that's been a massive problem because so much of the equipment in the NHS is really old, it's outdated. And also, you have hospitals where the bottleneck really is that they've only got one of or two of a certain type of scanner. And so then they're just not able to process patients as quickly as they would like.
Yeah, you do ultimately need people, though. We were talking yesterday about the number of people who are thinking, I'd like to be a nurse, is just dramatically dropped. If you can't have the people using these services who want to work there and they don't have the sort of fallout of staff that we have, that side of this needs to be tackled too.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I think there needs to be a proper strategy for training as well, especially if they want to bring down immigration, as they're saying that they want to. Certainly bringing back more incentives for medical training in the UK would definitely be a good thing. But I think a lot of what we've heard lately has been that the real bottleneck for the NHS is that equipment. It is that, it's all very well saying, we need to increase wages, we need to retain more staff, and they do. But actually, if you're not putting the money into the equipment, then the staff aren't going to be able to do anywhere near as much as they would like. And that was the big problem under the Conservatives, was that there wasn't enough funding going into that equipment. And I think this is the big test ultimately for Labour is can they fix these public services? I think for a long time in Britain, it's been the case that nothing works and taxes have been very high. If Labour can make things work, even if taxes go up, I think they are going to be able to retain the support of the electorate.
Yeah, well, that is the crucial test. Wes Streeting's going to be on Times Radio Breakfast 7:05, so you'll hear directly from him his sort of analysis of what treatment really the NHS needs. Fertility is on the front page of the Times, Jack. The fertility rate in England and Wales has halved in 60 years. Couples in their 20s and 30s are having fewer children. Why? What are the theories as to why this is the case?
Yes, I think the big factor here is greater female participation in the workforce that you've seen over the past few decades, and greater access to higher education for women as well. And that's a trend that we see across developed societies. As economies advance, as more women enter the workforce, they have children later and they have fewer children. But I think also there are some more specialised factors to the UK that we've seen lots of instability in terms of the housing market. We've seen real pressure on wages for people in their 20s, 30s. And that's obviously going to have a downward effect on the fertility rate, because it simply leads to people living more insecure lives, and you don't want to have children if you've got an insecure life. So I think that to a certain extent, there's a limited amount we can do about this. And if you look at other countries who've tried to boost their fertility rate through, stuff like cash handouts or those types of incentives, they haven't really worked so well. So I think,
and do we really want people to have a financial motivation to have a child?
Exactly, that's the case. I think, but I think there's a difference between, a financial incentive and saying, well, as a society, we need to ensure that people have the financial security in order to have children in the first place.
Well, definitely. I mean, this potentially will be a problem for our entire society if it doesn't get fixed. The Times put some of the analysis of cost of living and property, put, some of Gen Z off parenting, or at least delaying having children. Should we talk about some other stories? The budget. So many pieces of information have been leaked out, and the Speaker is pretty cross about it. He made that clear, Lindsay Hoyle, in Parliament yesterday. Do you think it matters that we found out more about what's going to come before the speech tomorrow?
Well, I think really it's a good thing, because it reduces the risk of the kind of shock that we had a couple of years ago with the mini budget under Liz Truss, where there's, it all comes at once and there's a big shock to the market, and consequently that has a real negative effect on the cost of government borrowing. I think the trend has really changed over the past couple of years, and I think both the Brexit process and then COVID had a big effect in terms of how governments communicate in this country. They are going direct to the public and the press much more than they used to. But I think that is a good thing, really. I think having a more informed populace, having more informed markets, I think that makes the process better. It makes it much easier for the government to take, quote unquote, radical action or tough decisions, because they're able to pitch roll in the first place. I like Lindsay Hoyle, but I think he's a bit out of date on this.
It seems like faux outrage to you.
No, I think Lindsay Hoyle really does care quite a lot about the sort of sanctity of Parliament, if you will. And certainly it's not only the budget that he's kind of raised these concerns about. It feels like he's raising these types of concerns several times a year when governments are going to the press or making speeches instead of going straight to Parliament. So I don't think it's faux outrage, but I think he needs to get with the times, really.
Okay, got it. And well, the Times previous used to be that if you leaked budget information, you'd be fired or you'd have to resign. So things really are very different. No stranger to controversy, Donald Trump, but it actually wasn't him who caused a stir yesterday in Madison Square Gardens. The front page of the Telegraph has Trump disowns the comedian over this Puerto Rico joke. Just to remind you what happened.
There's a lot going on. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
I mean, Tony Hinchcliffe was the warm-up act ahead of Trump's speech. I mean, he was a high-risk person to come on and warm up the crowd. I mean, it went down very badly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you say, the Trump campaign is certainly no stranger to controversy. I think why this really matters, though, is this election is going to come down to very, very fine margins. And there are a really important demographic of Hispanic voters in lots of these swing states that the election is going to come down to. So there are 500,000 Hispanic voters in Pennsylvania alone. That's a state that was decided by about 80,000 votes at the last election. 300,000 of those Hispanic voters are Puerto Ricans. So if that has a significant impact on who they vote for, that could swing the entire election. And it's felt for the past kind of couple of weeks that the momentum has been really swinging behind Trump, and he's been making big inroads among the particularly Hispanic demographic. And if this now swings the momentum back behind Harris, as it kind of feels like it does, this, Trump could be ruining the decision to have this controversial sort of roast style comedy at his rally.
Yes, he definitely may. It was a bizarre event yesterday, wasn't it? Because he was really pitching to who? Sort of more the media rather than actually the people in attendance in New York. Because he's never going to win in New York.
No, exactly. But I think there also is there's something of the prestige of hosting an event like this in your home state. And I think deep down, I think Trump would love to win New York because he's so associated with New York. And, being able to host this event is probably, it's a matter of prestige for him, I think.
Right, final thing, Jack. I have never flown first class or business class. If I flew BA, the headline here is Brunch Leaves, BA's top flyers queasy. Okay, so if you're paying something like £10,000, some of these flights cost to get a first class seat, your lunch may be swapped down for a slightly smaller brunch. I mean, can you believe it? The standards at British Airways are sliding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan of brunch, but yeah, if I'm paying 10 grand for a flight, I'm expecting a full 3-course meal to be enjoyed. And what's even more disturbing, actually, is the fact that they've been removing pajamas from passengers in business class flights as well. I mean, where did it end?
I know, in Club World, business passengers are no longer given pyjamas. I was thinking, if you were given those pyjamas for the British Airways flight, when would you ever wear them again?
Oh, I would enjoy them. There would be a souvenir of the only time I would ever get to fly business class.
That's true. Jack, thank you so much. Jack Rowlett going through the papers with me this morning.